It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. Go get 'em, George.
George Galloway, and the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
150 pounds of highly enriched Ukrainian is still picking your pocket, and Helen from Wales wrecks the BBC, wrecks the state censorship of the Irish rap band Kneecap by, well, videoing it on her phone and live streaming it to millions of people on Instagram. And the Israeli soldier who told the media that in Gaza he felt like we were the Nazis and they were the Jews risks expulsion from Harvard University. Not for what he did, but for what he said. And our poll is otiose. The Israel-Iran ceasefire is definitely not going to hold. The clues are in the air, as the missiles and the fighter jets might be. It's all coming up. This is the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway, the mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway, the world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
The mass hysteria in British newspapers this morning about the events at Glastonbury yesterday, where 200,000 people essentially took part in a pro-Palestinian uprising of Britain's youth, cannot disguise the fact that the country, and indeed the whole of the Western world, at least on the popular level, has moved seismically. The plates have shifted. Nobody cares about Israel anymore. Palestine is the story. It is the moral center of the universe, and those now caught on the wrong side of the line, on the genocide taking place in Gaza for more than 20 months, are damned, surely, in history. Even if, like Alastair Campbell, they're making a last desperate scramble to change sides. Even if, like Piers Morgan, they are making a last frantic effort to pretend that they are on the side of the angels. The receipts are in our possession. Those that backed and supported, enabled, funded, armed, and shilled for the worst set of atrocities since the Holocaust in the Second World War and in the years leading up to it are all damned forever. The Israeli soldier who told the Israeli media, it's amazing what you can read in the Israeli media that you would never be allowed to read in the British or American media. He told the Israeli media that he felt like the Nazi and he felt like the Palestinian victims of the so-called IDF they were the Jews. It is one of the most telling couplets of the whole conflict, of the whole chapter of genocide over the last 20 months. The Israelis were behaving like the Nazis. The Palestinian victims were like the Jews. He is a student at Harvard University, and as students do, he had gone back to Israel to get into uniform, climb behind an automatic weapon, and go killing Palestinian children in Gaza. And he would ordinarily have been welcomed back at Harvard, ordinarily have been welcomed back to his bank job or any other kind of job that these expatriate Israelis currently do. One of them was a university chaplain in Manchester University. Came back from killing Palestinians in Gaza and wondered why the students didn't welcome him back with open arms. But this soldier in question would ordinarily have been more than welcome back at Harvard, but now he's facing expulsion. Not for the crimes that he committed in Gaza, but for the words that he used in describing them. I just felt that this was, if you like, the peak or the trough of the current situation that we are in. I just felt that that couplet, we were the Nazis, they were the Jews, summed everything up. The mass slaughter continues. The slaughter at the feeding stations continues with scores of people, sometimes 100 and more, being murdered at a feeding station run by an American relief organization, but staffed by Israelis. That feeding station is supposed to be the concession that the international community made to the presence of famine stalking the land. But virtually every single day, scores, when it is not hundreds, of Palestinians are murdered there as they desperately seek food and water. It is now, again, according to a Harvard University study, likely that we have been grossly underestimating the number of Palestinians killed in Gaza over the last 20 months. It may very well be that 500,000 nearly Palestinian refugees, for almost everybody in Gaza is already a refugee, even before all this began on October the 8th, the year before last. These hundreds of thousands of refugees who are, and I stress the word refugee for this reason, the responsibility legally of the international community, of the United Nations, have been massacred. Not just by shot and shell, not just by bomb and rocket, but by deliberately inflicted famine. They have died of thirst. They have died of lack of food. And now some of the food being distributed in the Gaza Strip has been found to have been laced by a highly addictive pain-killing drug. I'm not making any of this up, amazingly. Amazingly, all of this is true and uncontested, except by Ben Goldsmith, who had to be rebuked by jemimakhan his own sister on social media today. Ben, you should be ashamed of yourself. I'm certainly ashamed to have once described you as a friend of mine. It's not been debunked, Ben. It's been proven. It has been proven by the Israeli media themselves. The Haaretz newspaper, which is the last remaining tiny candle, like a candle on a birthday cake, of anything remotely approachable as honesty and truth, has told us exactly what's happened, and the Israeli soldiers involved in the mass murder are telling us everything too. So all around the world, millions, hundreds of millions actually, now bristle with hatred and detestation against anything called Israel. And that's what was on view at Glastonbury yesterday. Except it wasn't meant to be on view. When Kneecap came onto the stage, the BBC, which had tried hard to have them banned from Glastonbury in the interest of cultural freedom and freedom of speech, you must understand, they failed to have them banned from the stage. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, failed to have them banned from the stage. So as soon as they came on the stage, the BBC cut the feed of Glastonbury, for which they had paid a fortune in BBC licence payers' money. They cut the feed and cut to another stage. But not only are these people malignant, cancerous, they're also fools, because they cut to a stage where somebody that we'd never heard of, called bobvylan, was even more rampantly anti-Israel and pro-Palestinian than Kneecap were. I'm not going to repeat the words that he said, although the people who are in a paroxysm of fury about the chant that he led have been utterly silent, while children have been murdered in their thousands upon thousands upon thousands. And you have been silent, and you want to get us riled up about a chant at Glastonbury? What kind of hypocrites are you? Labour MPs, somebody called Tap Out Ben Tap MP, who just described on Twitter how utterly depressed he is that people were chanting death to the IDF at Glastonbury, but he hasn't said one word about the crimes, war crimes, crimes against humanity carried out by the IDF on his phone, available on YouTube for over 20 months. These hypocrites are so beneath contempt, it's almost difficult to find the words to wither them with. But they cut to bobvylan, who presumably is now an international superstar. I'd never heard of him before. His music's not my kind of music. Has gone viral everywhere. And I'm sure his downloads on Spotify are doing well also. He turns out to be a man with a double-barreled name from the United States, who's been supporting Palestine since he was 15 years old. So the BBC could easily have checked his social media when they cut from Kneecap to him, but they're idiots as well as knaves. Kneecap themselves, well, they seem to have had a relatively uncontroversial outing at Glastonbury, and good luck to them, because as Mochara, the lead singer, said when he came on the stage, "I am a free man." Most of us thought it was a metaphor, but it was literally true. The terrorism charge, yes, terrorism charge, on which he appeared in court last week for holding a flag that somebody handed to him when he was on stage, has been dropped in total ignominy. The British state authorities that last week had a court hearing brought the man to court last week, have now dropped all charges against him. And the reason for that is plain. There is no jury anywhere in the land or many lands who would convict the guy standing up against the genocide whilst the British government is in full support of the genocide. There's no jury anywhere that would have found mochara guilty, so they have dropped all charges against him. And the Avon and Somerset police are such idiots, they put out a tweet saying they were reviewing the video of this bobvylan. Don't be stupid, PC Dixon. Why don't you go and investigate some real crimes? Why don't you investigate the crime of the British Prime Minister who said that Israel had the right to starve people to death, to deny them food, water, medicine, electricity? I know his name. I even know where he lives. In fact, there's Ukrainian rent boys that could tell you where he used to live. Whatever happened to that case? Why do the wheels of justice in Britain grind so exceeding slow for some cases, but not for others? That woman Connolly didn't grind very slow for her, and she's rotting behind bars. Very swift was that justice. But Dan Norris, the Labour MP, who's facing multiple rape and child sex charges, we're not going to see him in court until well into next year. Ivor Kaplan, the former Labour MP, former leader of the Labour Friends of Israel, he was caught on camera going to meet a child for underage sex. When's his case coming up? How come kneecap were in court so quick? Why are you able to drop some charges so quick? I tell you, this government is making a mockery, not just of the justice system, but of the police force themselves. Why don't you go and investigate some real crimes, copper, and leave the rising tide of support for the Palestinian people alone? Because it's not a crime. If most people in the country are with them, it is not a crime. And neither is throwing red paint on a warplane. That's all. Not bursting its tires, not disabling its engine, still less unfastening its bombs. Throwing red paint on a warplane that it turns out doesn't even belong to the Royal Air Force or the Ministry of Defence or the British government or the British people. It belongs to a hedge fund. We rent warplanes from hedge funds. The crime was not throwing red paint on that airplane. The crime was that that airplane was destined to fly to Cyprus and thence to Gaza to assist and facilitate the genocide which is now so comprehensively hated by the people of our country and around the world. You see how we've got this arse for elbow, Prime Minister Starmer? Whoever it was in your government that advised you to move heaven and earth to convict mochara of kneecap is such an idiot. I very much hope that you don't fire them. Keep them. Let them make mistake after mistake so that your premiership is soon nailed in its political coffin, as it is surely destined to do. Now, we ran a poll this evening. Will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold? 31,721 of you have already voted, but I can give you the answer, though you're welcome to keep voting. Netanyahu was supposed to appear in court tomorrow. The judge was not moved by Donald Trump's order to the Israeli justice system to drop the charges against his war hero buddy, Benjamin Netanyahu. But the judge says, fuck off, Donald. This is a court. You don't get to order us what to do. And so Netanyahu was due in court tomorrow. But now he isn't. And he isn't because in a late night and secret session last night, the Israeli armed forces and the Mossad and Netanyahu himself persuaded the judge there's going to be very, very big events this week. And it would be very inconvenient to the Zionist state if the Prime Minister were in court at the time. So it's not going to hold. And our old friends, Channel 13 in Israel, have just announced that there's going to be massive military action launched this week by Israel against Iran. And this time, they said, it will be unexpected. Like the last time, the sneak attack, which killed so many Iranians, families, women, children, neighbors of scientists and other public officials in Iran. Oh no, this time it's going to be unexpected, which may very well mean that it is happening right about now. I hope that Iran is better prepared this time than it was last time. I have a strong feeling that they are. This is the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
The airwaves. This savannah is a rigid dichotomy of fact and fiction. As vicious as the Twitter sphere, where the slightest misjudgment can spell being cancelled. One species rules over the airwaves through its ability to adapt and survive in even the harshest environments. The George Galloway. The top cat in these parts, it is mostly active on Sunday evenings in Britain and mid-afternoon in the United States. It seldom roars during the day. Most notable for its wide variety of headdress, it protects these parts from the mainstream media. You can catch this fine specimen on the mother of all talk shows. Don't pick a fight with it. They've been known to bite back.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold, yes or no? It was already overwhelmingly no. 32,516 of you have voted. You've got until 20 minutes before the end of the show to get your vote in on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, and on the YouTube stream. If you are watching on the YouTube stream, don't forget to subscribe to my channel and give your thumbs up to the show and share the news that we are currently broadcasting live on issues of the very greatest moment to all of your friends and contacts. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number is 0044 203 966 2625. The Honourable Craig Murray is himself a free speech martyr, and we'll be talking to him about that in just a minute. But he's also a historian, a former British ambassador, and an indefatigable human rights activist. And I'm glad to say, after some time away, he joins us again on the mother of all talk shows. Ambassador, thank you for being with us. Let me ask you, first of all, before I get on to the remarkable piece of forensic investigative journalism for which you were responsible a few days ago, what do you make of the fiasco over the British state charging mochara, dropping the charges, the BBC having paid for the rights, cutting away from a headline act, only to discover that the stage they went to was being performed on by a guy even more gung-ho for the Palestinians? Are the people who rule us idiots or knaves, or both?
I think both is a fair conclusion. They've lost control of the narrative. They really have. After many, many years in which an entirely compliant Zionist media was able to control the population, they've really not found a way of reacting to the fact that, Israel being in such an active stage of genocide has been seen by everyone live on their mobile phones, and the vast majority of people won't put up with it. But the state is still in denial mode, where it feels it can suppress the truth and suppress pro-Palestinian feeling. But actually, it's way beyond that. And politicians just don't know how to cope, and the media don't know how to cope, and the police don't know how to cope. We're in a situation where we have a fractured state flailing around, kicking its legs like a dying cockroach.
That's a powerful metaphor. We have an aroused people, don't we? I mean, I'd never heard of kneecap, never heard of bobvylan, but I'm following them now, and I'm downloading their tracks now. Even if I don't listen to them, I'll definitely download them. They are charging people, not just like mochara, but they've charged Palestine Action with throwing red paint on a warplane with terrorism, and they're going to proscribe them. The state is still digging in, doubling down, disobeying that old saw, when you're in a hole, stop digging. They're still digging.
They are still digging. And one of the ways that popular resistance is now showing itself is that there have been so many jury acquittals of Palestine Action. And that's a problem they're going to face, even under the terrorism laws. The parts of the terrorism law they would be charging Palestine Action with, they're going to have juries. They're not going to have juryless trials. Their ability to enforce it, they can stick people, as they're doing increasingly with Palestine Action, they can stick people for months on remand into jail. But the extent of popular rebellion against what they're doing is just far beyond what they can cope with. I saw a very amusing tweet from our friend Barrister Akanji today, in which he suggested that Palestine Action are going to rename themselves Yvette Cooper, so that they'll have to prescribe Yvette Cooper, which would be great.
For international viewers, we should explain she's the factotum of Keir Starmer, Home Secretary, who is introducing this proscription and is at the wheel of this attack on Palestine Action. Now, a man of your erudition, has certainly read Joseph Heller's 20th century masterpiece, Catch-22. And in Catch-22, a fella called Milo Minderbender was renting out his own air force to the Nazis to bomb his own forces, on the principle that business was business after all, and America's business was business. We now discover that our warplanes are leased from hedge funds, and we discovered it thanks to you. Tell us more.
Yeah, I mean, I should say nobody was more shocked than I was by what I discovered. I didn't start off by the journey expecting that to be the destination. I saw that that Auto Traders Limited, a private company, was leasing these jets to the Air Force. And I then started digging into who owned that. And I had to go back to 7 different shell companies until you came to who actually owned it, which was a hedge fund called Polygon, a hedge fund which Forbes magazine, the magazine of the super wealthy and not exactly a left-wing publication, a hedge fund which Forbes magazine called a moral disgrace and a shame to the hedge fund industry because of its practices. I've also done more digging since, and I've discovered that the asset value, the cost of these jets at the time of the PFI contract was $2.6 billion. And under the terms of the contract, by the time, £2.6 billion, under the terms of the contract, by the time they finish paying in 2049, they will have paid £10.4 billion. We are paying £8 billion in finance charges to the hedge fund, which is providing these aircraft, £8 billion.
Milo Minderbender couldn't even have dreamt of that kind of scam on the British public. Does this change the criminal charge that the activists are under? I mean, were they charged with damaging a Royal Air Force plane, which turns out to be a Polygon plane, and quite a nice little earner? Thank you very much.
Well, again, I mean, whether it will change the criminal charges, I'm not certain. It almost certainly will change the way a jury looks at it. And interestingly enough, of course, the private company has probably just lost its insurance because the government's declared it an act of terrorism. If it were an act of vandalism, it would probably be insured. Most insurance policies exclude acts of terrorism. So all kinds of amusing ramifications here. But I mean, this actually really is awful when you think of it. There are 15 aircraft under this contract, 9 of which are permanently with the RAF, one of which is, I think, on a separate contract for the Falklands. And then 5 of them are available on demand to the RAF, but may be leased to other militaries. And what's interesting is to discover whether they have actually been working for the Israelis directly or have been paid for by the RAF when they've been servicing the Israelis. And we don't know the answer to that at the moment. That's something we need to dig into.
You are a national treasure, Craig. This is mind-bending, if Milo will forgive me. I want to ask you something else. It's a bit left field. Forgive me, I didn't prepare you for it. Did you have on your bingo card, as a former Foreign Office official, a very high-ranking one, the MI6, the intelligence service which reports to the Foreign Office, would appoint as its new director the granddaughter of a Jew-murdering, torture-enabling, rape participant of Jews during the Holocaust in Ukraine, would be elected as the new director of MI6. Personally, I feel that even the James Bond movie franchise would balk at a plot twist like that one. What say you?
No, it's astonishing. And one of the extraordinary things about this, of course, was it was published at great length in the Daily Mail, of all places. And the Daily Mail is one of those many media outlets which has spent the last 2 years denying the existence of Nazis in Ukraine. So this is a very embarrassing piece of counter-narrative for them. But also, I mean, apparently the lady never knew her grandfather, so can't hold it entirely against her. But I do understand that she worked alongside Mossad in the Middle East quite extensively, was involved in technical development with Mossad, including with Palantir and Pegasus. And my source tells me my source said that's definite. They said whether or not she was involved in the technical development for the pager attacks in Lebanon, they did not know for sure. They couldn't say definitely. They thought probably on that one. But one thing they said was definite was that she was recommended to Lammy, who makes the appointment, but she was recommended to Lammy by Mossad. She wasn't the expected candidate to get the job. So that's really quite interesting. She's somebody with a long history of working alongside Mossad in the Middle East and a lot of involvement with the Israelis, which is why Lammy appointed her.
Yeah, I take your point entirely that, the sins of the grandfather can certainly not be visited on the granddaughter, though from what you say, she may have racked up quite a few sins herself. But you know the Foreign Office. If somebody's grandfather had been a KGB colonel in the Second World War, they would not have made it onto the shortlist for Director General of MI6, would they?
No, I mean, I almost didn't get into the Foreign Office at all when I first joined. I had 3 months while they did extended vetting on me, not because of my political views, but because my father had a minor criminal record. And for that reason, they weren't certain whether or not I should be allowed into the FCO. It was a very minor criminal record of theft. So, if my father having a very minor criminal record of theft is a barrier, having a relative who's actually a mass murderer and mass rapist, you would think would be more of a barrier, but evidently not.
The point you make is a good one, that those people who told us that we were inventing Ukrainian Nazis, we were inventing it as a Putin talking point, are now having to come to terms with the fact that the head of MI6's grandfather murdered Jews and boasted about it during the Holocaust, raped women, Jewish women, in Ukraine during the Holocaust, and was known as, in official documents, the butcher. It is mind-boggling. Now, I read, I don't know if it's true, that this didn't come up at her interview, and so she didn't think herself to mention it. Is that even remotely possible?
I guess it is. I'm not. I'm not sure. But I'm going to tell you the story of my last positive vetting interview, which I passed, I should say, before I eventually left the Foreign Office, where the an MOD colonel, conducted the interview, and he had a dossier in front of me. And he said, yes, I see there are some concerns that you like a drink and you've had a number of girlfriends, he said. Then he looked at me and he said, which is unusual for the Foreign Office. It's normally small boys, he said. and at the time, I thought he was joking. I now realise he wasn't.
No. No, absolutely not. Now, you and I are done certain, Ash. You worked in the Foreign Office. I've opposed it all my life. Have you ever known a worse Foreign Secretary than David Lammy? One completely bereft of political integrity or intellectual heft or any kind of record at all. It used to be the second job in the state. If he's the second top man in our state, we're in big trouble, Craig.
That's very true. It's very hard to see what his supposed qualifications are. And I mean, the people who were my contemporaries in the Foreign Office are now at the top of the Foreign Office. And I still have friends there. And one thing I can tell you for sure is that there's never been a more disliked Foreign Secretary than David Lammy. He's overtaken David Owen, I think, as the most obnoxious person to ever hold the job. He's personally rude. He's unpleasant to staff. He's particularly unpleasant to junior people, to people working for him doing minor tasks around his office. He's arrogant. He's not pleasant to visitors. His knowledge base, he has to be told everything, as though describing to an 8-year-old child. And in describing to him the situation in countries in Africa, for example, you have to be very, very careful to make sure he grasps which country you're talking about and where it is. Things which normally you expect the Foreign Secretary to have some hold of. So it's very difficult. But unfortunately, I mean, this is a trend across the Western world, isn't it? Where, and again, as you say, we're not in the prime of youth, but we've seen a lot, and what we've seen is a tremendous decline in the political class across the Western world.
Without doubt. Honourable Craig Murray, many thanks for that wisdom and experience. Craig Murray, former British ambassador, historian and human rights activist here on the Mother of All Talk Shows. I think that interview will run and run, don't you? Let's take a short break. Your calls coming up next. China is the one that is doing what ought to have been done from the start. You and I both know there are some things that are too important to the people, the nation, the country, to be left to the private sector, and there are some things too specialized that are too important to people's ordinary lives to be given over to the state, as I always put it. Have you ever seen anyone happy with a haircut from a state barber, or a suit tailored by a state tailor, or a great meal being served in a state canteen? There are all kinds of things that are better left to the private sector, but there are all kinds of things that are too important to be left to the private sector. And that synthesis of public and private, that mixed economy, that common sense socialism is what we in the Workers' Party of Britain fight for our own country. Every country has the right, of course, to its own path, and Russia has the right to its. I'm only interested in Russia nowadays in as much as Russia is playing the leading role in stopping the spread of American hegemony, stopping the unipolar tyranny of United States rule. Of course, because I love Russia, I particularly want Russia to do well. I want Russians to do well. But what kind of government they have is a matter only for them.
You are listening to the Mother of All Talk Shows with George Galloway.
Will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold? to the end of the show. Yes or no, get voting on my Telegram, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, or on the YouTube stream. Let's go to line 1, where Sofian is in the Netherlands, wants to talk about Palestine and Ukraine. Sofian, welcome to the show. What would you like to say?
Hello. Hello, George. Can you hear me?
Hello, sir.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay. First, I want to salute you and thank you for the good work you're doing, you know. I didn't know about you before, but the last time the situation, a couple of years of Palestine, I started watching you like George Napolitan and stuff like that. And I want to salute you really for the good work, because it's important what you're doing, giving another side of the story. And, you know, many people wouldn't know even what it means, Nakba, if it was not for a show like yours, for example. So I want to really thank you for that.
Thank you so much for that.
And it takes a lot of courage, you know, to say things like it is risky. So thank you. My point, I have 2 points. The first point, you know, like I said, I watch your show and I see people like Scott Ritter, like Colonel McGregor, and I'm with you about the situation of Palestine and what's happening. But the last time, sometimes I hear a lot, Netanyahu this, Netanyahu that, Netanyahu this. And, you know, if somebody starts watching your show, not only television, it means that he have already a little brain to look for the truth somewhere else. So he's going to use it. And it makes you wonder at one point when it becomes too much used, Netanyahu this, Netanyahu this. It comes the question, is it that if Netanyahu goes tomorrow or dies, what you going to have? The good old Israel. Like Israel is going to be pigeon of peace.
No, you're absolutely correct. It's a point that I make often myself. In matter of fact, the other people in Netanyahu's cabinet are even worse than him, though that's sometimes difficult to understand. But they're not as good as him. They're not as tricky and as successful as he is as a politician and as a leader. That's why he's been at the top for so long. Not just the flatness of the surrounding landscape, but he has a political skill set, particularly in America, that has been very, very bad for us. So it's still something worth hoping for that he goes to prison and that he's removed from office. It's still something worth hoping for that he calls a general election, which he's threatening to do, and this time loses it, because Israel's next leader will be no better morally, but will certainly not be as good and skillful and wily and cunning a demon as Netanyahu has been. So it's a bit like Starmer, you know. Will Starmer be replaced by somebody better? No. But the very act of removing a prime minister, the very act of bringing down a prime minister can only hasten the day when their entire project is fundamentally undermined. That's how I look at things anyway. Sofian, thanks for your kind words. I appreciate them very much, especially coming from the Netherlands, where my own good wife was born and raised. Tara says kneecap was correct in every sense, and the world supports them in standing up for the Palestinians in Gaza. And shame on Starmer for trying to stop them taking part in Glastonbury. Quite right, Tara. It's come to something. I mean, the man that I beat to enter Parliament back 40 years ago or more, Roy Jenkins, was the man that ended the role of government in theatre, in cinema, in productions like Glastonbury. He, as a Liberal Home Secretary, said that the state should not be involved in trying to police the arts. Keir Starmer ain't no liberal, bruv. Thanks, Tara. Anthony Wedgwood says, bobvylan was on the same stage as kneecap, but was scheduled to play before them. They removed kneecap from the listing on iPlayer Live for that stage. They have uploaded it since, but removed bobvylan. Confused? You will be. Darrell Ernst says Iran should agree to no permanent end of hostilities. That doesn't call for the dissolving of the Zionist supremacy state into a united state with equal rights for all people. And Chickaboom 2 says Iran is not done with Israel. Iran is rearming with China and Russia weapons. Crowhawk says ceasefires to Israelis are just a cynical matter of momentary pragmatism. They are pathologically incapable of keeping to any deal they ever signed. They have violated 960 ceasefires. Well, let's go to Virginia in the United States, where Al wants to talk about our old friend Gonzalo Lira. Go ahead, Al.
Yes, hi, George. Good evening there. Thank you for having me. As I mentioned to your secretary, that I'm a former U.S. Senate candidate in the U.S. 2020 general election, and my team is currently trying to compel the Trump administration to conduct a formal investigation on the death of Mr. Gonzalo Lira in Ukraine. I understand that you have previously featured his case, as well as spoke with his dad on your show, and I would like to ask for your help to basically showcase and support our initiative to conduct a formal investigation on the death of Mr. Gonzalo Lira. We started a petition on change.org. I will share that with your office, the link to it, so that maybe you can advertise or publish it, the campaign via your platform, if that's okay.
We definitely will, Al. Gonzalo Lira was a big friend of the show. He became familiar to millions of our viewers over many, many brave and startlingly clear interviews. He was cruelly murdered by the highly enriched Ukrainian that I spoke about earlier, 150 pounds worth of highly enriched Ukrainian. Little Zelensky, who is buzzing around our countries daily. Does he ever go home? Stealing money, picking the pockets of the taxpayers in various Western countries. He cruelly murdered Gonzalo Lira. And even worse, you might say, the United States Embassy in Kiev, a country which was a wholly owned subsidiary of the Biden presidency, where the American government was in command, in control of everything that happened there, didn't lift a finger to assist their own citizen held in inhuman conditions and subjected to extortion and torture, and eventually killed through neglect. It is a very worthy thing that you are doing, and please keep us appraised of its success. We'll do everything that we can to help you. A big thanks this week to the top donors who visited the moats.tv website. Just to let you know, we depend upon two things: the YouTube earnings from this show and the donations from you, the viewers, to bring you these two shows per week. We depend on it. If we don't get it, we can't do it. So I need everybody to go to moats.tv and leave something, £1, €1, $1. But these people I'm about to announce did much, much more than that. James Marco Marzella, Lasse Karagianis, David Buckley, Richard Rogers, and John Lowry. Thank you for your very, very generous donations. I'm deeply grateful to you. But everybody watching must go to moats.tv and give what they can. Miguel is in Los Angeles, wants to talk about justice and starmer. Two words that should never be uttered in the same sentence, Miguel. Go ahead. What do you want to say?
You are correct, sir. Thank you very much for the opportunity. You see, what happens is that all the countries in the Western world, they are controlled top to bottom, the governments, by the same people. They call themselves Hebrews, Jews, etc., and they run all the justice departments and the judiciary in every country in the Western world. So they manipulate the situation so that they can hammer people who are indigenous to those countries, to those lands, and yet set free people that belong to them. What happened to Starmer is a Mossad operation. They let him know that they know everything about him. And if he doesn't get in line with Ukraine, he would not survive to the next day or so. So that is why there's no justice going on at Old Bailey against these individuals, because these are Mossad agents and they're trying to fabricate a way to set them free. At the same time, they're seeing the behavior of Starmer, that he's keeping online with Ukraine, because the Ukrainians that are calling themselves Ukrainians, they're Hebrew Ukrainians. They are not indigenous Ukrainians. That's
well,
why
I'm going to stop you.
I'm
going to stop you there because I was giving you enough rope to hang yourself, but it's becoming offensive now. Starmer is not a Jew. The people who are in the high cabinet offices of the British government are not Jews. Donald Trump is not a Jew. J.D. Vance is not a Jew. Hegseth is not a Jew. The head of the CIA is not a Jew. The searching for Jews in this picture is not only completely erroneous, completely false and wrong, it's highly dangerous because it poses the possible outcome that if we could get rid of all the Jews, we wouldn't have these problems in the world. And that, of course, is the road to Nazism. That is the road to fascism. The British newspapers are not owned by Jews. The British television networks are not owned by Jews. Matter of fact, neither are the American networks. Rupert Murdoch is definitely not a Jew. This kind of anti-Semitism is completely unacceptable here on the Mother of All Talk Shows, but much worse than that, it sets everybody off looking in the wrong direction. All these people that I have mentioned are not Jews, they are Zionists. They are supporters of the part of the US empire, the battleship Israel, the aircraft carrier Israel. Israel is carrying out American imperial policy in the Arab Middle East, in the heart of the Muslim world, not the other way around. And hitherto, before that, it was a British battleship, a British aircraft carrier. And it wasn't carrying out Jewish policies, it was carrying out British empire policies, as it now carries out American empire policies. Now, you're absolutely correct that that part of the deep state, which is most deeply committed to the defense of Israel and everything that it does, are in a state of capture. They have been utterly captured. Our politics is as captured almost as your politics are captured. They are captured to carry out imperial policy in the most brutal, savage, genocidal fashion that any of us have ever seen since the Holocaust. But I'm not going to invite you to dilate on the Holocaust because I worry that you might even deny it. Don't come back, Miguel. You're not welcome on the Mother of All Talk Shows. Top 10 we are in the podcast charts in Russia this week. We're in the top 25 again in the UK, Ireland, Brazil, and Australia. And we are still number one in Tunisia. How about that? Number one in Tunisia. You can download the Moats podcast by scanning the QR code on your screen now. And you can listen to the weekly podcast on the aforementioned moch.tv website. And once you have listened, please don't forget to leave a review, rate us. It helps us grow the podcast. Ali is in Iraq and wants to thank me. La shukra la wajib, Ali. You don't have to thank me for doing my duty, my friend. What would you like to say?
Hey, sir. My name is Ali Hussein. I'm calling from Karbala, Iraq. I just wanted to thank you. I just want to thank you with the deepest respect and admiration. I, along with the free people of Iraq, extend our sincerest gratitude for all the courage and the principled stance in defense of humanity and human rights. Your unwavering voice for justice, especially in solidarity with the Iraqi people in the 90s and the Palestinians people, particularly the people in Gaza, has been a source of hope in these dark times. Your bold advocacy, whether through raising awareness, condemning oppression, or standing against justice, reflects the true spirits of compassion and moral leadership you taught us. In a world where many remain silent, doing nothing, you have chosen to speak up for the voiceless in this world, reminding us all in the humanity must prevail over the indifferences. The people of Iraq and the Palestinians people will never forget your solidarity with us. You have shown that true fame. You have shown that true fame is not measured by accolades, but by courage to stand for what is right. I will never forget.
It's
what
a very
you did
beautiful.
For us in the 90s.
Yeah. No, I still dream about Iraq, Ali. It entered my bloodstream in the 1990s and has never left it, even though it's unlikely I shall ever see it again. And as I often say, when I hear the word Iraq, I turn around as if someone had called my name. So it's particularly emotional for me to hear what you had to say in a call from Iraq. And of course, my work on Palestine predates even my work on Iraq. But I meant it when I said, La shukra ala wajib, you don't have to thank me. I regard it as having been my duty, because my duty is to the Lord. My duty is to the whole concept of truth. Somebody said to me on Twitter just an hour or so ago, we know what side you're on, and I answered, I'm on the side of the truth. How about you? As Malcolm X said, we stand for justice, no matter who it's for, no matter who it's against. This is our duty because we believe that we will face the Lord on the judgment day. And we have to be able to say that we always strove for justice, for haq in the Arabic language. So it was an honor for me. I have no accolades, but I do have scars. And that's why I'm wearing a hat to cover them. Ali, thank you. And God bless you and the people of Iraq. Coming up after a very short break is one of our best friends, Richard Medhurst, the very renowned independent journalist and political analyst, and another free speech martyr. It's Free Speech Martyr Night here on the Mother of All Talk Show. Stay tuned.
You have to remember back in 2002, 2003, there was a wish by George Bush for regime change. That's what was driving him. Nothing to do with weapons of mass destruction, which of course didn't exist in Iraq. So they had to construct some sort of formula, some sort of cover story in order to persuade the British public that intervention in Iraq was right. Now, David Kelly, as an expert in weapons of mass destruction, knew that this was untrue. He knew that there were probably no weapons of mass destruction in Iraq.
That was a guy that could have brought down, the whole system.
I reckon you're chaff. You've been thrown up to divert our probing.
The Foreign Affairs Select Committee, that parliamentarian briefing, I think that was an indignity to him.
we saw it on the news, and my very first thought was shock. Oh my God, you know, this man is in the eye of the media hurricane. He should be protected by that at least.
You've got blood on your hands, Prime Minister. Are you going to resign over this?
I don't know the details of how Lord Hutton happened to be selected, but what was certainly the case is that he was the right kind of judge to use from the point of view of Downing Street and the intelligence services as well.
Of the 21 days of hearing, only one half of one day was spent on discussing the forensic aspects. That is disgusting.
We were given the Hutton report the day before it was published, but actually what happened was he went too far.
The events of 2003 were disgraceful ones in this country's history, and it's unfinished business. Those responsible for an illegal war, those responsible for the death of David Kelly, have not been brought to justice. There's been no inquest into David Kelly's death. There needs to be one. We need to make sure that those who behaved in a reprehensible way in 2003 are finally brought to book.
Now, the film Killing Kelly has been available to my friends on patreon.com for quite some time. But at the request of the film's director, the brilliant Irish film director Sean Murray, who directed the film for absolutely zero pay, was an act of pro bono solidarity and for the cause. But at his request, he now wants more people to see the film than have seen it so far. So pretty shortly, we'll be releasing it free of charge on my YouTube channel. So go to my YouTube channel, George Galloway Official, and you should find it. It's not up there yet, but it will be imminently. So just a teaser of what I think is an absolutely brilliant film. And Sean wanted it shown more widely because, of course, the manufacturing of consent for the war on Iraq is precisely what is going on right now in the manufacturing of consent for the war on Iran, which, as I said earlier, looks absolutely imminent. 38,118 people have now voted. Will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold? And overwhelmingly, people quite correctly believe that it will not. Richard Medhurst, free speech martyr, being threatened with trial for terrorism, for writing articles and tweets in not one country but two, joins us now. And we're always very happy to see you, Richard. Your travails, the Calvary that they are putting you through is not underestimated by anyone. But let's start with the apparent imminence of another round of the Israel-Iran war. On the face of it, this would kill Donald Trump's big, beautiful peace deal, big, beautiful ceasefire, and big, beautiful Nobel Peace Prize stone dead. It will mean that the ceasefire didn't even last a week. What do you think?
Thanks for your kind words, George, and it's always a pleasure to be on the program. Well, I suppose I'm a bit biased. I mean, my parents have Nobel Peace Prizes, and it's bad enough Kissinger and Obama have them too. So I think I'd rather Trump doesn't see the light of day in terms of a Nobel Peace Prize. But yeah, I don't think that there's any. I haven't seen any demonstration of good faith or goodwill on the part of the Americans. If you saw that statement, I know Trump has released many deranged ones, but the latest one where he said that he was very upset by what Khamenei, the supreme leader in Iran, had you know, how he described winning the war essentially, and that that Trump had dropped working on sanctions relief as a result. I mean, I find that laughable because he's the reason that there are sanctions on Iran. He left the JCPOA in May 2018 after it had been working perfectly for 3 years, and he put sanctions on them. So he had 7 years to right that wrong. to correct course, and he didn't do that. So I don't believe that the tipping point was a 10-minute speech by Khamenei. He had no intention of doing that. And given the Israelis' tenacity and persistence in going after Syria, for example, which has always been a thorn in their side. I mean, you're seeing, of course, the news coming out this week, although I think you and many of us who are against the dirty war predicted this a long time ago and were smeared for it. There's going to be normalization between Israel and this new regime. And remember that this war wasn't just 15 years or 14 years. It's been really about 50, 60 years now the Israelis have been trying to take over Syria. So I don't see them ever relenting or stopping when it comes to Iran. They're hell-bent on regime change, and they're going to do whatever it takes to do that. And it's never been about the nuclear weapons. We all know that. The fact Iran was able to respond with ballistic missiles and defend itself at all with conventional means is really the crux of the issue. And Trump even said as much when he withdrew from the JCPOA. He said that he didn't like the fact they had ballistic missiles. He didn't like the fact that they had these so-called proxy groups, quote unquote, which what he means is their regional allies. That has really been the main issue, because they want to dominate the region and have dominion over the Middle East without any sort of pushback. And Iran, aside from Syria, Syria was the only Arab state actor in the region, but Iran was the more powerful state actor in the region that could provide that support for people to resist American imperialism and Zionism, and it had its own independent foreign policy. And, it's got too much gas and too much oil for it to be left alone. So I really don't believe the ceasefire is going to hold. And I saw also the figures just now from the poll on your show, what the viewers are saying, and I wholeheartedly agree. I don't think it's going to hold for very long. There's just too much at stake here, not in the moral sense or the legal sense, but just in the sense that Israel, Netanyahu has come away with all these victories. He's gotten away with, killing Nasrallah. He's gotten away with taking over Syria, carrying out genocide in Palestine unimpeded. And I suppose it makes sense from a strategic point of view that he thought he should go for Iran now, lest he never get that opportunity again. But that doesn't make it any more legal or moral. It's just a calculus that he made. And I think he might have overplayed his hand for now.
What would be different this time, though, Richard? By all accounts, certainly by the account of people very, very close to Donald Trump, people like Steve Bannon, it was the Israelis that asked for the ceasefire scarcely a week ago. And that was because of the ability that Iran has to fight back. So if Israel is about to, as Channel 13 said this evening, make another widespread attack, wider and deeper this time, on Iran, Iran presumably will fight back, and I'm just wondering what would be different this time.
Yes, it does seem a bit contradictory. I mean, that really is the whole nature of Zionism, because they can't get embroiled in that war without also hurting themselves. But I mean, it's not just. I'm not going to make this about Netanyahu like Bernie Sanders does, and where he kind of absolves Zionism of its contradictory nature. The Israelis, you saw how they're all running to the shelters multiple times a day, paralyzing the whole economy. They want to steal the land, but without any consequences, and they want to dominate others without any consequences, but they're having to negotiate this impossible contradiction where they're fighting a state actor this time, and not just lobbing shells at refugees in tents. And this poses an entirely new set of challenges. We've never seen Tel Aviv and Haifa hit like that before, ever. It's the first wake-up call or shock that Israelis have ever experienced in 3-4 settlers, generations of settlers. So they're having to contend with that, and this is another reason why I think it's not just about the interceptor missiles that you refer to, where they spent 20%, I think, of the United States stockpile of THAAD missiles. It's not also about the fact that they couldn't intercept half of the things that were coming in, whether they were using David Sling or Arrow. I think it's, or the Patriot system, by the way. I think it's also because, as you indicated, and now they're spreading these rumors as well through Israeli media, that they might be going for a surprise attack. That's very Israeli and Zionist and American to do. There's no seriousness or goodwill or good faith behind any agreement or any ceasefire. I mean, the one in Lebanon that supposedly took effect the day before Syria fell, by the way, never came into effect. It's been violated 1,000 times, I think some people have counted. It's certainly hundreds of times. And I mean, it was violated not just in the south, but also in Beirut. So all over the place. And the one in Gaza, Trump presided. He was in the White House just a few months ago when the Israelis broke it again. So it's a natural order of things that they're going to break this one as well, and I think that they're going to try and make themselves, maybe they'll leak it that they simply had to ask for the ceasefire because they've expended their stockpiles, and they're simply worn out. That could also just be disinformation and counterintelligence to kind of trick the Iranians into thinking that they're in a more favorable position than the Israelis, and then they hit them very hard. I think the Iranians really have to watch their step now and be very, very careful, because it's an existential threat, and the Americans and the Israelis are not going to stop until they get the same results that they got all over the Middle East, including in Syria very recently. Once Syria was gone, I think you and I, or we all knew that Iran was going to be next eventually.
I'd love to talk to you more about Lebanon, but I don't want to put you in any difficulties vis-a-vis your case. It's a sad thing to say that you and I, as free British citizens, we have to walk on eggshells on a matter of great public interest, and in which the public has a big interest because of the sword of Damocles that they have placed over your head. So let me be more general. We saw yet another of these incontinent rants of Donald Trump on Truth Social, in which he dilated on the new Abraham Accords, which were originally signed by a few stooge countries in the Middle East, but not by the most significant ones. But according to Trump, Gaza is going to be administered by 4 Arab countries, 2 of whom he named, Egypt and the UAE. The population is going to be asked to voluntarily emigrate to countries around the world. The resistance leaders are going to go into exile, God knows where, and with what assurances. And that Syria and Saudi Arabia would both be joining a new and improved Abraham Accords. What can you tell us about the veracity of any or all of that?
Yeah, I think it was sort of natural that Saudi Arabia would come last. I was just saying that actually half an hour ago on my show. That was my suspicion, and I was also talking about this aspect of normalization with other Syrians, and just kind of trying to gauge what the national or public opinion is in Syria. Frankly, I think people are too worn out from the war, from the sanctions, to even put up a fight or any kind of pushback. And there's no public infrastructure, there's no security, there's no rule of law or order in Syria. Basic services, basic necessities aren't being met or fulfilled, let alone people being given the possibility or the time to go and protest this latest move. And I find it so shocking and telling that instead of trying to fix the country, because it's barely afloat, it's barely standing, the priority is to go normalize ties with Israel. I mean, that tells you everything you need to know about what this war really was about originally. And it's not just the fact that they're normalizing, it's also that they're doing it at the expense of Syria's own soil. The Israelis call it a buffer zone, but it's really just stealing more land in the Golan Heights, and they've already taken it. So I don't see what kind of deal this is. This is more like them dictating to Syria what's going to happen. And it's already happened. They've taken Mount Hadamon, they've taken an area twice the size of Gaza, in addition to what they've already been occupying since '67, and they've got all this gas that's ready to be stolen and shall we say explored in quotation marks on the coast. That's also true of Gaza. That's also true of Lebanon, which a lot of people forget. There's tons of gas in the Leviathan Basin that the Israelis are ready to steal and give to Europe because Iran and Russia are under sanctions. So it is 120% in their interest to normalize as fast as possible. And I'll also remind the viewers that Syria had a foreign debt of a whopping $15 million, which is really nothing for a nation state, for a country to have in terms of foreign debt. And Qatar and Saudi Arabia, of all people, had the benevolence and the kind-heartedness to come and pay that off for Syria just about a month ago. And then all of a sudden, almost instantaneously, the World Bank said that they're ready to start giving loans to Syria. And we can all guess where that loan money is going to go to. Saudi Arabia and Qatar, who have all these construction projects and pipelines that they're ready to build through Syria. So it's another aspect of this racketeering that has been a long time in the making, and we need, or they need rather, that normalization to go ahead and take place before they can start robbing and hollowing out the country. And of course, not to mention the fact that they've disbanded all these Palestinian groups. That's also been a large part of that normalization. PIJ, for example, and others were based in Damascus, and a lot of them have been arrested, and the groups have been dissolved. So the Israelis really getting everything they want. I don't know what Syria is getting out of any of this. Usually when you normalize ties or establish ties, it's supposed to be, politics in general is made up or defined and based on common interests, and there's no common interest here. It's just Israeli interests. So absolutely, Syria will come first because that's a priority, and then Saudi Arabia makes sense. But you correctly pointed out that these leaders that will be sent who knows where, I can't think of any actors that would take them with the true security guarantees, because they've all been compromised at this point by Israel. So it's kind of a moot point. But on a strategic level, George, the Israelis have certainly made a lot of headway, a lot of progress in theaters that they've tried to win in for decades now, in Lebanon, Syria, Palestine, and now they're even making a bit of headway in terms of getting the US to help them attack Iran. But I'll just say that in terms of public opinion in the West, I think they're at their lowest point. I don't think Zionism has ever been in so much peril, and it is important to highlight that contrast, that they are winning on the ground in terms of strategy purely through sheer brute force. But when it comes to public opinion in the West, where their life support is based, they are doing worse than ever. I think you saw what happened in Glastonbury, for example.
Richard Medhurst, as always, fantastic. Keep on keeping on, as they might say in Glastonbury. Richard Medhurst, renowned independent journalist and political analyst. Let's take a quick break, then it's your calls all the way up to Gayatri's social media news roundup. Stay tuned.
What a great show this is! I listened to it, I thought, wow, what a great show. I've called into your show today, George, because I'm a great caller. Probably the greatest caller you've ever had. I really am. The only way your show could be better is if it had more of me, Donald J. Trump, in it. You keep talking about me, George. You do. I've heard it. I have. So many of the American people, the best people, listen to your show. And I've heard them crying about me. I have. And I listen and I go, ooh, America, don't cry. Don't cry. You need to be careful what you say about me, George. You don't want me to put a tariff on your show like I did with China. And then you'll come running for my help, just like little Zelensky. I know you will. I know these things. Make the mother of all talk shows great again. That's why we're here. That's what we're gonna do, George. We're gonna boost your ratings. Donald is gonna boost them bigly. I'm giving your show the Trump bump. You're welcome, George. Thank me. And remember, nobody talks like me, nobody calls like me, and absolutely nobody ends a phone call like me. I'm hanging up now, not because I finished, but because I won.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
I just love that. Nobody hangs up like me. Donald, will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold, yes or no? Almost 40,000 people have voted, and overwhelming people say no, it won't. Let's go to Florida. Why wouldn't we? Where Said wants to talk about European Zionists. Go ahead, Said.
Hey, George Galloway, I love you. I love everything you do and your support for the Palestinian people. Thank you for everything you do. I'm Palestinian myself.
Thank you, bro.
I'm kind of nervous, talking on live. I've never done this before, but I really want to get into the conversation with you. But this is European colonization, period. This is one of the biggest lies that they've been trying to spread and brainwash people with about making it a religious war against Jews, Muslims, and Christians. But Palestinians are Christians, Palestinians are Muslims, and they're Jewish Palestinians. We are all Palestinian, and we want a liberated, free equality. We want to live in peace. We want to be able to visit our family in the Holy Land. We don't want war. We want freedom and dignity and liberty for all. It doesn't matter where you're from. If you're in Palestine, you're in Palestine. But we are one. We're not supposed to be divided how they have been dividing us. In Palestine, you know what's going on. It's the biggest lie, that it's called Israel. Israel was in Palestine. It was, right now I'm really emotional because of what's going on in Gaza and everything. And it's so many layers of lies on top of lies, on top of lies, on top of lies. If you try to uncover one lie, then you have to uncover the other lie, and it's a lie. You guys know, and your audience knows what's going on in Palestine, and they just need to stop the European colonization of Palestine under Israel, trying to use the Jews as an scapegoat. This is European colonization, and we need an end to colonization of the Holy Land. That's it. It's not hard to understand.
It's really not, and I'm glad you put it that way, Said. It's really not hard to understand. As sometimes journalists say, it's complicated. It's not complicated at all. This is a European colonial settler state exactly like the other European colonial settler states that existed in different parts of the world across the continents. The Dutch settler colonial state in what is now Indonesia, the French colonial settler state that they built in Indochina, the white British and Dutch colonial settler states that they established in southern Africa, in Rhodesia, in what is now Zimbabwe. These were all European colonial settler states, and Israel is exactly the same. And it had nothing to do, nothing at all to do with Judaism. In the beginning, the founders of the Zionist movement were all atheists. None of them believed in God at all, let alone that God promised them the land of Palestine. Apart from anything else, they tried in multiple countries around the world to establish their colonial settler state. But for the grace of God, there would have been a different PLO, the Patagonia Liberation Organization. In Argentina, they were trying to set up Israel in Argentina. They tried to set it up in Uganda. They tried to set it up in the Seychelles. They tried to set it up in Kenya. They would have accepted any piece of territory given to them by the great empires to establish their state, because it had nothing to do with the Holy Land. They wanted a piece of the colonial action. They couldn't accept that all these settler states were coining it big, and they were being left out. And this is not rocket science or complicated. It's all there in black and white from the conference that founded the Zionist movement only a little over 100 years ago in Basel, in Switzerland. Theodor Herzl, from that day to the day just over a century ago when the British promised Lord Balfour, promised the leaders of that Zionist movement, particularly in Britain, Lord Rothschild, they promised them that they would view with favor the establishment of such a colonial settler state in the land of Palestine, and that was long before the Holocaust. For those who think that this all happened because of the Holocaust, this was all already happening long before Hitler, long before the Holocaust. It was one empire promising a people the land that belonged to another people, and made more piquant by the fact that the British Empire didn't even possess the land of Palestine at the point that they made that promise. So everything you've said was correct. There have always been Jews in Palestine. They lived in perfect harmony with Muslims and Christians in Palestine. It is Zionism, this nationalist ideology, that Jews are not a religion, they are a nation with national rights. This nationalist ideology is what not only caused well over a century now of blood and horror in the Middle East, but poisoned the well, the once fine, clear well of the Jewish people in Europe, in North America, who were the very best of people, who were the leaders of everything that was good and everything that could be a part of a better future for humankind. I've just been looking at a picture of my comrade Joe Slovo, the leader of the armed struggle of the liberation movement in South Africa. He and his wife, Ruth First, Jewish leaders of the liberation movement of Africans in South Africa. Jews were at the front line, the vanguard of all that was good in the world until Zionism, this vulgar, crude, fake nationalism introduced by the Zionist movement, poisoned that particular well. Thanks, Said, for giving me the opportunity to say that. Tony Donovan, wow, sends $100 US. Says, keep going, George, with love from Tony and Nick. I take my hat off to you, Tony and Nick, for that enormous and generous donation to the mother of all talk shows on moch.tv. Edgar B. says there are only two foreign secretaries who are really worth the title, and those are Russia's Sergei Lavrov and China's Wang Yi. And Valerio Chiora says Gonzalo had a brutal clip about Victoria Newland and her larger family. I would bet top dollar that she was somehow involved in the jailing and killing of Gonzalo Lira. And Nicoletta Datku says, yes, he's right, the Zionists are not Jews. The Zionists is a group of individuals who think they are superior to all of us, deserve everything, and they can abuse us in any way they want. It's true. The vast majority of Zionists are not Jews, and many Jews are not Zionists. This is a very central and important truth for people to grasp. Le Chat says Richard Medhurst's parents raised a wonderful young man. Richard is proof of how important it is where and how we are raised and by whom. My deepest respect to his parents. Amen to that. Le Chat, let's go to England, Hertfordshire, where Maggie wants to talk about the BBC doc, The Promise. Let's hear from her. Maggie.
Hi, George. I'm rather nervous speaking to you because I admire you so much. I watch you all the time. I'm the same age as you, by the way. So here we go. Brief history of me. I lived in Jordan from 1980 to 86. I was a stewardess for Alia. And I met lots of Palestinians. I mixed with them. So I know the history. I read The Palestinians by David Dimbleby. And, yeah, I am pro-Palestinian.
Jonathan,
period.
by Jonathan Dimbleby. An important distinction.
Sorry, Jonathan, yes. So, yeah, I'm Irish, so you can imagine where I'm coming from. Just to say, I was decorating my flat yesterday, cleaning the walls, and I happened to put on This Cultural Life, which I do love from the BBC Sounds. Yeah. And it had on Peter, I don't know if I'm pronouncing this correctly, Kempinski is the director. He's done Wolf Hall, various dramatizations. Anyway, I listened to him talk about what he thought was his best work ever, called The Promise, years ago, about 11 years of him looking into the British peacekeepers going over after World War II into Palestine, and how initially their sympathies obviously were with the Jewish people and how it all turned. Well, obviously, after listening to his cultural life, where he was threatened, by the way, as being anti-Semitic, even though he's a Jewish man, he says it's his best work, and he stands by it today. So, obviously, I got on to Channel 4. It's still on there, by the way, The Promise. And dramatizations are so much better than just documentaries. Claire Foy is in it. So I watched it yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
It's as relevant today as it was made then.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because I myself haven't watched that, and I suspect if I haven't watched it, many others will not. But we will now. So first of all, thank you for that. The fact that he was threatened does not surprise me at all. The fact that as a Jew he was accused of anti-Semitism, some of the best Jews in the world are regularly accused of anti-Semitism. So it's a trick, said the Israeli minister Shulamit Aloni to me in Tel Aviv, in her apartment, around her dinner table, when she was giving me dinner more than 40 years ago. She said, long before this phrase was widely uttered, it's a trick. We use it all the time. Our first trick is to accuse anyone who criticizes us, anyone who supports a different narrative, a different point of view, of being anti-Semitic. And the truth is that in the last 40 years, this term has been completely bankrupted. They have bankrupted it. Steadily, they have reduced the value of that currency to the point that if everybody is an anti-Semite, then dangerously, nobody is an anti-Semite. How can we tell now if somebody really hates Jews or if some Jews really hate them? That's the danger of the bankrupting of the concept of anti-Semitism. And the point that you made is a very powerful one. The British forces, my wife was just asking me about this today, or yesterday, about the King David Hotel. When these Zionist terror gangs, the inventors of terrorism in the Middle East, blew up British civil servants, British military officers, British citizens, blew them up, 92 of them, murdered them in a terrorist bomb attack, as well as the British soldiers that they hanged by piano wire in the orange groves of Haifa and booby-trapped their bodies so they would blow up when their comrades came to cut them down. This Zionist terrorism tried to murder Churchill himself when he was fighting Hitler in the Second World War. They tried to blow up the Foreign Office itself. They did murder the British envoy, Lord Moyne. They murdered him. They murdered the heroic rescuer of hundreds of Jews in Sweden, Count Bernadotte of Sweden. They murdered him. You want to talk about terrorism to us? You invented terrorism in the Middle East. And Now nobody talks about that. Now these people, very elderly, if not now deceased, who were British civil servants in Palestine after the Second World War, who were in the Palestine police, all of them hated the Israelis because the real terrorists were the Israelis and the victims of terrorism were the Palestinians. And isn't that the unkindest cut of all? That the victims of terrorism are called the terrorists, and the terrorists themselves are called the victims. Well, Maggie, don't be a stranger. We loved hearing from you, but we've got to go to Los Angeles, where Amir wants to talk about Iran, Israel, and the US. Go ahead, Amir.
First and foremost, Mr. Galloway, I want to extend my greatest, sincerest gratitude. In Farsi, I would say,
we lost Amir, and he was just about to say something very nice to me. I'm sure we'll get back to him. A big shout out now to tonight's top donors who've been on to the Moats.tv website since we came on air. Mark Peter Edwards, Gail King, Aman Khan, Simeon Wardle, and Veronica Simmons. I'm really grateful to you all, and to all of you who have not yet given but will do, I'm sure, before they leave the scene tonight. 40,638 people voted. Will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold? Only 7% on Telegram think yes. Only 16% on X think yes. 13% on the YouTube community poll, and 12% on the YouTube stream. Let's go back to Los Angeles, where Amir was just getting going when we lost him. Amir, welcome back. What would you like to say, my friend?
Thank you so much again. Gormuna Shoma Beram, you are our sacrifice, Mr. Galloway, from Los Angeles, the monarchist heart of Iran. I just had a quick question in regards to like everything going on, and I guess this is more of an emotional question since I know you have many, many years of experience of handling these type of personalities. I mean, the amount of surveillance I've been going through just for even having my stance on Gaza is unbelievable. Between me having my cousin like diagnose my phone and me finding out I have Pegasus on my phone, to like being pulled over multiple times by police, having been asked by Gaza, having been asked about my opinions at Gaza at the border, it's kind of, I feel a sense of isolation. And I guess my real question is, and I know your principle has always been never debate a Zionist, and I do not debate Zionists on principle because of what you stood for. I guess my real question is like, between everything that's going, between the Hezbollah machine that's like feeding into Iranian nationalism, and in LA and in Toronto, how do you even deal with people who refuse to acknowledge like the Palestinian humanity? Because I mean, to me, in my opinion, most of the monarchists and royalists in Iran, they're all pissed off in LA because they lost a bit of land. They've lost a lot of resources due to their wealth. I know I'm painting them with a broad stroke, but in my experience, the wealthiest of the royalists come from that position. How do you emotionally navigate like dealing with these type of personalities who are constantly calling you like an Islamist, a jihadist, all of these different things? I mean, I know if it was a Zionist, they'd be calling me an anti-Semite, but it just feels so weird, especially considering like the ramp up of surveillance in the United States and like everything that's going forward. Like, do you think there's what do you expect going forward, and like how do you emotionally handle like these type of things? Forgive me for not being organized in the way I'm expressing myself. I honestly
you've been very beautiful in what you've said. It's perfectly cogent, the points that you're making and the questions that you're asking. I could answer shortly and say I don't argue with these people because, first of all, I don't have unlimited time. You're a young man, I'm not, and I'm not going to waste it arguing with someone who considers the Palestinian people to be subhumans or human animals or Amalek. Why would I waste my remaining breath and my remaining time in discussing or arguing with someone like that. My task is to ensure that that person's fascistic views are exposed and that people are inoculated against them and that people are persuaded. And, you know, I've done my share of that, Amir, as you kindly imply. When I began in this Palestine cause, you could have fitted all of the supporters of the PLO in a small hall in central London, and now you could not fit them into the entirety of central London. So if I've played at least a small part in that raising of consciousness, that mobilizing of popular support, then I can go to my grave pleased about that, and I can face the judgment day with that in my favor. As to the monarchists, I haven't actually ever met an Iranian monarchist, but if I was still in Parliament, I'd be meeting one tomorrow, because your king, your pretender, the clown prince Pahlavi, is speaking in the British Parliament tomorrow. Where else would he be? He can't go to Iran because people would chase him away. He is persona non grata in Iran because his father stole billions of dollars from the Iranian people. And his siblings and his mother have expended hundreds of millions of that on a life of plenty. So he can't be in Iran, so he's in the British Parliament. Good luck to the British parliamentarians about that. I've never met an Iranian monarchist, but I've met many of the same kind of people in Florida who are of Cuban extraction. It's the same gig. The people who were in bed with the former dictatorship, in that case, Batista, the ones who tortured the father of Ted Cruz, which gave him a lifelong hatred of the people who overthrew the people that tortured his father. Work that one out. The rich and the powerful in Batista's Cuba fled when the revolution triumphed in Cuba, and now they live in Florida nursing their wrath. And these gold-toothed emigres are some of the most unpleasant people on the earth, and Ted Cruz is one of those. And I'm sure that the Iranian monarchist exiles are the same. I certainly know that they are the people who ran away with Iran's money. They are the people who were torturing the Iranian people before the overthrow of the Shah. They are the people who were making hay under the most corrupt and brutal dictatorship anywhere in the Middle East at that time, and there was a lot of competition for that title, because that's what the Shah's Iran was. It was a charnel house. It was a torture chamber. It was a mass execution squad. It was a regime that literally plundered the nation's wealth and distributed it amongst the monarchy and its comprador, many of whom, as you say, are now in Los Angeles. So I don't waste time talking to them. You're not an Islamist. You're not a jihadist. You're somebody that loves Iran, the country of your patrimony. Thanks very much for that call. Let me go to England, South Shields, where Dan wants to talk about Glastonbury. Go ahead, Dan.
Good evening, George. I just wanted to say about the essentially Keystone Cops attempted censorship of Glastonbury by the British establishment, including the government, including the BBC. And clearly it's backfired on them in quite a massive way, in that trying to silence kneecap. Everyone at Glastonbury seems to have become kneecap in a Spartacus fashion. But I also want to caution that as laughable as these attempts at censorship and authoritarianism have been, and as laughable as the figures involved have been, like this ineffectual supply teacher Starmer and his mate Fat Lammy and the likes, we still must be very conscious and very wary of the slide into authoritarianism that we see with not only the censorship of kneecap and Glastonbury, the hauling of mochara in front of the courts, and as well as that the prescription of Palestine action, and these laughable attempts to investigate this guy bobvylan. We need to be cautious about that. And also, I think this is no accident. This has been coming for a few years with the treatment of the likes of Richard Medhurst that we've seen tonight. And as well as this, I think the appointment of, as you and Craig discussed earlier, this Nazi descendant as the head of MI6. Again, not necessarily a sins of the father thing, but I think Europe and the West in general it's never had a real reckoning with its relationship with Nazism in the past. We know the history of the founding of organisations like NATO and NASA, and the centrality of former Nazis to that and the reconstituted German state. And I think we're starting to see this bubble to the surface again with some of the figures appointed into key positions, not just in Britain, but across Europe. And of course, that collaboration with fascist groups in the Ukraine. I'd also like to say something just quickly about the BBC and what a craven organisation the BBC has proven itself to be over these past few days, certainly in the treatment, again, of these artists at Glastonbury. But I'd like to point out that while the BBC seems to be pearl clutching about what Kneecap may have said or what this bobvylan guy actually did say, a few years back I remember a BBC employee at the time, Jeremy Bowen, actually tweeting out guidance for how to throw Molotov cocktails at Russian tanks, how to presumably cause death to Russian soldiers. That was not considered an offence by the BBC at the time. Of course, later on, what this guy bobvylan has said seems to be considered beyond the pale for the BBC, just as Gary Lineker was dismissed from his job or forced from his job for this quite moderate tweet at the time. So we see the double standards of the BBC. Something which I don't know if you're aware of, but I also read over the last couple of hours that Channel 4 is now going to screen a documentary about Palestinian medics in Gaza that was passed on by the BBC because the BBC have been too cowardly to screen this documentary. So it just shows how far this national broadcaster, which I never particularly had a high opinion of, but it did in the past show willingness to screen, for instance, the Time Watch documentary on NATO's Operation Gladio in the past, but just to show how far it has fallen, the BBC and the government, a lot of them should hang their heads in shame.
Well, look, Dan, we've had a lot of good calls tonight, but that was, for me, undoubtedly the best one. I really do hope you join the Workers' Party of Britain if you're not already in it, because we're on exactly the same page, and you're a very eloquent and powerful debater, and I'd very much hope that you would join us. That was an outstanding survey of the scene. I'm not going to add to it, not least because Gayatri's now here, except in this one regard. The bobvylan was chanting death to the IDF, but that's all he was doing, chanting from a stage to an audience that isn't in any position to deliver death to the IDF. But the BBC has been utterly culpable and willfully, deliberately deceiving its viewers on the mass murder of uncountable millions of murder and mayhem and mutilation of millions of Palestinians in Gaza. They have been a deliberate collaborator in that crime. There's 2.4 million Palestinians in Gaza, and all of them have been suffering siege, shot, shell, rocket, bomb, starvation, thirst, and destroyed health facilities, every hospital in Gaza, and all of that has been suffered by 2.4 million people with the full support of the BBC and with the full support of the British government, with the full support of the French, of the German, and of the United States government, and many other Western governments. They are all jointly, severally responsible for the mass murder of Palestinian children, the mutilation of countless numbers of Palestinian women, the destruction of virtually all Palestinian homes, hospitals, schools, feeding stations, United Nations outposts, and the rest. And the BBC has deliberately, I'm stressing this word deliberately, and its journalists, including Jeremy Bowen, who knows better, I know, because I know him well for decades, all of these have Palestinian blood on their hands. All of them are co-criminals with Netanyahu and the IDF and the other actors who have caused this murder and mutilation to the people of Gaza. So the BBC cut the feed of kneecap, but then they made sure there was no feed of the Holocaust, of the genocide in Gaza these 20 months past. Dan, wonderful call. Gayatri is in the studio with me now with the social media news roundup. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Let's stay in Glastonbury. I've got an email from Stephen Mulholland in saying, George, do you remember when the BBC defended a comedian on Have I Got News For You for saying we should blow up Glastonbury to save us from Jeremy Corbyn?
I do. I actually saw that in real time. I saw on Have I Got News For You, that so-called comedian, saying the best way to get rid of Jeremy Corbyn's supporters is to bomb Glastonbury. And the BBC backed him. The BBC supported him. The hypocrisy is off the charts, Gayatri.
Off the chart. And you won't, I don't know if you remember, but he added to that, not just the Jeremy Corbyn fans, he also expressed his distaste for Bob Dylan. So much irony here, right?
Bob Dylan or
yes.
Bob Vylan?
No, Bob Dylan. The real Bob Dylan.
Man,
and he said, if Bob Dylan were to headline at Glastonbury, it would be two birds with one stone. Can you imagine? And now we're talking about Glastonbury over Bob Vylan. I mean, as you said, I hadn't heard of them before either, but I'm following them as thousands others around the world have. And what makes me wonder is, so the BBC decided to cut from kneecap into to another stage, and they don't do their research. I mean, BBC editors, did you not see that it's Bob Vylan? They have been supporters of Palestine for such a long time, and they have made it clear. They have political songs, and you thought it was a safe bet, but it wasn't. It was worse, wasn't it? I mean, this is a complete, all this noise.
Fiasco, isn't it?
Fiasco. I mean, this PR disaster for Starmer and BBC, so showing the complicity and the echo chamber between the politicians and the media that we have.
It's really speaks volumes about the Keir Starmer premiership. As somebody printed yesterday, and I read it out at the Workers' Party meeting.
Yes.
Starmer increasingly resembles a panicked, bespectacled supply teacher living in terror because he can't control his class of 12-year-old girls. That is exactly where Keir Starmer now is. And this fiasco of now dropping the charges against kneecap, having charged them with terrorism, it's almost funny if it wasn't so tragic.
Will the Israel-Iran ceasefire hold? Matthew White says, well, Israel seems to really enjoy dropping bombs and firing bullets, so I can't see them stopping in a frenzy. And the latest is that they supply the whatever aid that gets through the flower.
Laced with dangerous drugs.
I mean,
this is like something from Dr. Joseph Mengele of the SS in the concentration camps. Who would do that? Why would you do that? Seeking to hook starving people on dangerous drugs, addictive drugs? What kind of people are you?
Well, Dr. Norman Finkelstein himself describes it as such. I mean, there's no other person who's entitled to say so. He's describing it as the Holocaust. All the scenes are like replicas. It's horrific. Dogma Lai says Israel is wounded, and a wounded animal that is fighting for its very existence is at its deadliest. So I hope Iran is using his time wisely. And Matt Alexander says nuclear enrichment, regime change, geopolitical domination, and oil are still on the minds and on the menu for Israel and the US. So Netanyahu will almost certainly be back. Iran will now push ahead with getting a nuke like North Korea did as a deterrent, at least. So this will make the West jittery. Sadly, I don't see the ceasefire lasting all that long. Coming back onto North Korea, on this day in 2019 was the famous scene of Donald Trump walking in the DMZ.
Oh, was it?
Yes, him walking into the North Korean demilitarized zone and shaking hands with Kim Jong-un.
The little rocket man, he was calling him before that.
Yes.
But, I mean, that was a good example of Donald Trump. Bucking what the deep state and the neocons were trying to get him to do. Why didn't he do that again? What happened to that, Donald Trump? You made friends with Kim Jong-un. Why can't you make friends with the other people that you are making war on, or threatening war on, or tariff wars on, or all the other things that you're constantly threatening? Why don't you take a leaf out of your own book? I didn't realize it was the anniversary of that. Go ahead, Gayatri. Give me one or two more.
Okay, one more from Wilson. Why would Iran agree not to possess nuclear weapons? They've been attacked by 2 separate countries in the last month alone, plus various other attacks and assassinations by Israel. Plus, both Iran and the Ukraine are important future trade routes and economic routes for China and BRICS. So the nuclear demand by the USA is just a ploy to provoke, and the USA is actually more interested in regime change to install a puppet to control the Straits of Hormuz. So he's pointing at the Straits of Hormuz rather than Israel in itself. And the BRICS straits, the trade routes of BRICS, this is putting regional strategic pressure on China and take over Iran's oil and gas.
Sure, and China just in the last month shipped billions of dollars worth of, or euros actually, or RMB, but billions of Iranian oil. And now they can transport that Iranian oil thanks to the railroad that has finally been finished. And they're saving huge amounts of time and therefore money in the trade route that they have established with Iran. Ditto the north-south corridor that Russia and Iran have established. That's why they want to break the regime in Iran, so they can weaken Russia and China.
They can, yeah. It's BRICS may seem like not much at the moment, but it may
become.
It may become, and therefore causes real jittery among the West, as was described. Well, I just want to close on the fact that yesterday we had our big Workers' Party meeting in London. And I hope that the previous caller is indeed going to join us, because we did get to meet some Modes callers, our Modes audiences, like Elaine from Brighton. So that was wonderful. It was a great event. It was very wonderful.
We even recruited at 7 o'clock in the morning. I hope we've recruited 2 young women in Carlisle.
Yeah, that was wonderful.
Let's hope.
It's wonderful. We've got one more call coming up for you to close the show.
Okay, although my tummy's rumbling, I need my chips. Veronica in Canada on Palestine. Go ahead, Veronica, you're the last call.
Hi, George. I'm very happy to talk to you, and I'll be very fast, I promise. Okay, first of all, I'm still having a hard time dealing with people that not only support the war, but they also justify it. A friend of mine said the other day, referring to Gaza, they voted for that government. And I know, George, you know the history well. I am originally from Chile, and when the coup happened in Chile, I was probably 7 years old, and my parents did not deserve to die because they voted for Allende. So I think you kind of answered my question, and it's hard to deal with people like that. You kind of answered the question in the previous call, and just tell me what to do, because I'm losing hope here. Like, I know that I shouldn't spend too much time, talking to people in that way, but at the same time, thank you so much for the way you faced Piers Morgan the other day. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much.
Well, it's very kind of you to say, and a very important point that you make. It's the second time it's been made. Not everyone can have their own approach. My approach is this. If I come upon someone who is a defender of genocide, who is a defender of Nazism, who is a hater of black people or of Jewish people, of Muslim people, I just block them. I have, I think, the experience to know who is persuadable and who is not, who is merely misguided and who is venal and evil. I think instinct and experience teaches you that along the way. My job is to reach those who might be headed in that direction. My job is to deal with the arguments that I know to exist about the genocide, about the dehumanization and so on. And by the way, Veronica, your country was one of my first causes. I became friends with so many Chileans who were driven out of their country by an American imperialist coup against their government and the murder of their president, Salvador Allende, and the torture and murder of tens of thousands of Chileans, including the flower of the nation, Victor Jara. And so I go back that far and further in advocating for what's right. That would probably be my final word. Advocate what's right. You know what's right. Your conscience tells you what's right. Advocate for it. And you will expose the evildoers, the wicked and the evil. You will expose them, and in turn, therefore, their arguments will fall on stony ground. I'm very optimistic. That may surprise you. But I've seen it all. I've been through it all. I am very optimistic. I'm not a Glastonbury goer. I'm not a kneecap fan. I'm not a bobvylan fan. But I do know when I see one, a rising tide of public opinion which rejects the tropes and the lies and the narrative and the manufacturing of consent for what's wrong in the world. A rising, an uprising, I would call it, against it. It's why the state cannot risk any jury trial of any victim of their draconian, tyrannical, dictatorial crackdowns for Israel, for Ukraine. They can't, because a jury is 12 good men and women and true. A jury is a jury of one's peers. And if public opinion is, as I believe it to be, the British state cannot win a jury trial for evil, for wrong. They cannot win it in any part of this country. They may very well go on trying. They may very well adopt different tactics, like proscribing Palestine action, but not putting on trial Palestine action people, who have almost every one has been acquitted in a jury trial. But they have imprisoned them for months, over a year often. So the process becomes the punishment. They can do that, but they're forced to do that because they know that they cannot count on a majority in any jury anywhere in the land. And I honestly think the tide has turned and it is now irrevocable. Good is going to win, Veronica, just as your parents were, I hope, able to return to Chile, just as fascism was defeated in Chile. The bad will be defeated by the good, and not that far distant either. Thanks very much for being with me this evening. 41,707 people voted on the most one-sided poll for quite some time. Virtually nobody believes that the Israel-Iran ceasefire is going to hold. So we'll be back, God willing, Gayatri and me and the team for the Wednesday show. The mother of all talk shows comes to you twice a week, but it can only do so if you support it. Support it by spreading the word about it. Bring more viewers to it. And please, if you can, go to moats.tv and leave a small donation right now. I'm asking you, I mean it. It's been great. Thanks very much. See you.
It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows. It's the mother of all talk shows.
Go get 'em, George.